presentation.
Let me know when you're ready, Kyle.
You're good to go.
Okay. Call to order the regular meeting of the Rio Dell City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Garnes,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Here.
Councilmember Carter,
I'm here.
okay, Councilmember Wilson,
Here.
Councilmember Woodall, City
Excuse.
Manager, she's excused, thank you. City Manager Knopf,
Here.
Chief of Police Connor,
Here.
Finance Director Dillingham,
Here.
Community Development Director Caldwell,
Here.
Water Superintendent Jensen,
Here.
Wastewater Superintendent Taylor,
Here.
and City Clerk Dunham's present. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have nothing to report out of closed session. So I will stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll trip over a few things while I'm trying to sit down. Okay, here we go. Public presentations. This is the time for persons who wish to address the council on any matter not on this agenda and over which the council has jurisdiction. As such, a dialogue with the council or staff is not allowed under the Ralph M. Brown Act. Items requiring council actions not listed on this agenda may be placed on the next regular agenda for consideration if the council directs, unless a finding is made by at least 2/3 of the council that the item came up after the agenda was posted and is of an urgency nature requiring immediate action. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes.
Currently, I see no hands raised.
Thank you.
And I have no emails that are, unless the only emails I have are related to agenda items.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. So then we will move on and I forgot after the roll call, I was going to welcome Supervisor Bushnell. Welcome and thank you for coming, Supervisor Bushnell. And
Good evening,
now
everybody.
Good evening. We will move on to the consent calendar. Is there anyone from the council who would like to remove an item from the consent calendar?
Yes, Mayor Garnes. I'd like
Which
to
item?
make Item 4 and item 9.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, is there anyone from the public online, email, or raised hand that wishes to pull something from the consent calendar?
Currently, I see no hands raised.
Thank you.
No requests via email.
Is there a motion to approve items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8?
So moved by Johnson.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. Carter.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Mayor Garnes.
Yes, motion carries 4-0. Councilmember Wilson?
Item 4 is the authorized city manager to sign a customer participation agreement with RCEA. City manager, is this just like an oversight thing? Is there a charge associated with it, or is it just more of an oversight that we're doing this right on the?
Yeah,
there's no charge to the city. It's it allows RCEA to be reimbursed for their activity to help us with the Cal OES grant.
Okay. So they get reimbursed on top of it for help on us.
Correct.
Right. Thank you. The other item is item 9 is on the approval of the overlay. How does that line up with what we had budgeted for the for that streets project?
So currently there is nothing specifically in the budget for this item. There is about a remainder, I believe, of a little over $100,000 in street projects funding that we'll have at the end of this fiscal year. But this amount we will have to return to the council with a budget adjustment in order to move the project forward. So the bid amount of $448,415 is basically in line with the amount that the council had identified in terms of annual street work in the 5-year plan. So, so it's basically consistent with that broad-reaching planning objective of the council to focus in on street rehabilitation. But there is no specific allocation in the budget for this particular project. We will have to come back once we have a better understanding of whether the contractor believes that they can finish this prior to June 30th of this year, or if it would be in next year, in the next fiscal year, in which case we just bring it in with budget.
Well, that's probably more my question is how which it sounds like you answered was more how, like our estimate. We kind of, even though it wasn't budgeted, we had a number that we were targeting to expend for this fiscal year on the because the other part, there was some stuff. I think there were some other items. I know there was one for Miller Court, and I don't know. I have the thing that was in the packet, but I don't. Do we have to go out and get an RFP for that too? To get a bid for that one over there?
No, Miller Court was included in this total bid package.
Okay, so it just said overlay, but so this
Oh,
includes fixing that hole.
It's mostly an overlay. However, there are
Uh-oh. Kyle, we lost you. If you're speaking, we're not hearing you.
We're not hearing Kyle. That's
No.
city manager. Doesn't look like he's muted.
I'm sorry, could you hear me?
We can hear you now. We couldn't hear you before.
Okay. So the project includes a lot of different components, overlay being the bulk of it. That's the primary focus of the project. And that's overlays on residential streets. However, there's everything from a wastewater component, which is adding a manhole on Ogle Avenue in a section that staff cannot reach to maintain. So there needs to be an added manhole there. There is some stormwater drainage facilities, and then there's some road reclamation on Aloha out to CC Market. So there's a little bit of projects beyond an overlay, but it's all centered around the overlay.
So this basically covers everything that we were targeting for 2021 is all in this one bid.
Correct, and it's a very, very competitive bid. We did have the numbers reviewed, and the contractor appears to be responsive and responsible, and is doing work relatively nearby. So This is a contractor we've never worked with here in Rio Dell, but we're looking forward to doing so.
All right, so that answers a lot of my question that everything's covered in this one target. So very good. That's all I have on that.
And Deborah, you're muted.
Thank you. Were there any hands raised regarding these two items 4 and 9?
No, there seems to be no hands raised.
Okay, then is there a motion to then accept items 4 and 9?
I make a motion that we accept items 4 and 9 as presented in the agenda.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second by Johnson.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Mayor Garnes.
Yes, motion carries 4-0. I will move to, make sure I'm still, we will move to staff communications, page 56 of your packets.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. Hopefully you have received our spring 2021 newsletter. I do want to thank the staff for putting that together. We had a copier error that delayed the issuance of the spring newsletter by probably close to 10 days, but we were able to get it out last Friday. And so hopefully everybody received that in between Friday and Saturday. Or hopefully no later than Monday. So the newsletter was issued. Another important point that I want to make sure that we bring up and that the public is aware of is that Caltrans will be conducting work adjacent to Eagle Prairie Bridge on all 4 corners of the bridge. So on the Scotia side, on the Rio Dell side for ADA improvements. So that is scheduled for April 26th into June. There could be obviously construction delays, but that is the date that we have been given, starting on April 26th. So there's no construction on the bridge itself, and the bridge is expected to remain open to vehicular traffic, but it will be restricted in terms of pedestrian traffic. So one side of the bridge should be closed at a given time, and then the other, only one will be open. So it should be workable. And then we're looking forward to the completion of those projects. Those are ones that have been needed for a long time on that particular facility. And I do want to give kudos to Caltrans for their outreach for this construction effort. They have been communicating, I think, pretty effectively on the construction. So thank you. With that, I will return it back to the council, see if there's any other questions of myself or staff.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garnes. Was wastewater Superintendent Taylor, where do we stand? How far along has Tesla gotten on the battery installation?
I would say that we are hitting another milestone on May 10th to have all the civil engineering completed for the project. We've been working with the community development director and then Topher Blunt from Tesla to kind of push forward our final plans, our site plans for the project, but it looks like things are moving along. They should be breaking ground here in the next few months.
Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mayor Garnes.
Yep.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson?
I have nothing.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter?
Just that I liked the story about the cow.
That was a good story.
So yeah, other than that, no, nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions. Are there any hands raised or emails regarding the staff reports?
Currently, I still see no hands raised.
And I see no emails.
Thank you. And we are now moving on to presentations. Presentation of the Climate Action Plan. Page, I don't see a page. Am I,
Yeah,
I'll be able to figure it out.
yeah, Mayor Garnes, if I may.
Oh, yes, go for it.
So the presentation was not attached to the packet.
Okay.
However, there will be a PowerPoint. And so I'm going to ask Rosa, I believe it's Connor, who has the PowerPoint, and we need to enable him to be able to screen share. And while we are doing that, I'm just going to hand this over to Kevin Caldwell, the Community Development Director, who has been working with the county on this, and see if he just has a short update for the council.
Quick
Thank
word,
you.
it looks like it should be ready to go. Sorry for
All right, Mayor Garnes, members of the council, thank you very much. We have on hand tonight Connor McWigan and Michael Richardson from the Humboldt County Planning Department. They have been some of the leaders in the Regional Climate Action Plan, and they have a presentation for us. As the council may remember, we started this process late 2018, and it is a collaborative effort between the county and the 7 cities. And it's actually been a very good effort on everybody's part. There's been a very good dialogue going on, and with that, I'll turn it over to Michael and Connor.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and share my screen and start the presentation. Can everyone see my screen or see the slideshow?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's great. Okay, so yeah, my name is Connor McWigan. I'm a planner along with Michael Richardson at the County of Humboldt, and I'm excited to be here today to give a brief overview of the Humboldt County Regional Climate Action Plan to your council. And Michael and I are here also to answer any questions. I guess I'll just go through the presentation and then we can field questions after. So the purpose of my report today is to bring everyone up to speed on the Climate Action Plan, on all the work that we have done with Kevin and Kyle in the city of Rio Dell and with all the other cities in Humboldt County, and hopefully talk a bit about upcoming milestones as well. So this is the goal for the project. Climate Action Plan in this context means a plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And our goal for this project is to have a regional climate action plan adopted by each jurisdiction to reduce emissions. This is a high-level timeline for the CAP project. We launched the project in late 2018, and we've compiled some different components of a climate action plan so far. And I'm going to get into some of these, but that would include a greenhouse gas inventory and forecast, taking a snapshot of emissions and looking at where they're headed. We've created measures and developed a draft, at least an internal first draft of the narrative. And then looking forward, we have the first public draft ahead of us and CEQA review, and then ultimately, hopefully a public hearing in CAP adoption. So CEQA is an important topic, so I thought I'd start there, an important topic for climate action plans. For all of you who may not be familiar, the California Environmental Quality Act is a set of state laws and guidelines administered by state agencies that basically set out a process for the review of environmental impacts of certain types of projects. And the overall purpose of CEQA is to provide information on environmental impacts to decision makers like your city council and the public in general, and to mitigate those impacts where they are present. CEQA guidelines allow for the greenhouse gas impacts of future projects to be evaluated using an adoptive plan for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So that basically means that projects that have to go through CEQA are allowed to reference a climate action plan and say, let's say a project is able to comply with all of the relevant measures of the climate action plan, then that would allow them to say that their greenhouse gas impacts would be less than significant. So this is the CEQA streamlining process that is often talked about with climate action plans, and it can be one incentive to creating a climate action plan. Though in this case, the climate action plan must meet a few requirements, and this is how we've structured our project. Whether or not we end up going down this route of CEQA streamlining, this is the best guidance from the state on how to develop or structure a climate action plan. And so these requirements are a greenhouse gas inventory and forecast, greenhouse gas reductions target, quantified greenhouse gas reductions measures, and implementation and monitoring plan. So one more bit about climate action plans and CEQA. I'd like to talk through two different scenarios for your council to give you an idea of what two options that we're considering are for the climate action plan. And these terms qualified and non-qualified, in the first case, a qualified cap just means a climate action plan that has gone through CEQA review and has completed most likely an environmental impact report and is eligible for the streamlining that we just talked about, that I just talked about. And a non-qualified cap, it sounds pejorative, but all it means is that a climate action plan that is not has not met the requirements or has not completed an EIR and therefore is not eligible for CEQA streamlining. So the reason why I'm getting into the weeds here on CEQA is because this is one of the key sort of decisions that we're facing with this project. These are just two different options that we're considering, and they have different pros and cons. Projects can tier or streamline using in the case of a qualified cap, they can tier off of a cap CEQA document for greenhouse gas analysis. It makes greenhouse gas analysis on a project level easier for everyone, basically. And in the case of a qualified cap, there is a requirement to implement and monitor and update on a regular cycle. And if a cap is non-qualified, then there's no requirement to implement, no specific requirement to implement, at least in terms of CEQA, and no requirement to monitor or update. So as I mentioned, the first key element for a climate action plan is a greenhouse gas inventory. This is our snapshot of what emissions are like today in Humboldt County. And we're using 2015. This is the most recent year that we had data available. And the number one major source of emissions, I'm going to present an overview of the results of the inventory. So transportation, that would be the combustion of fuels in both personal vehicles and other vehicles within Humboldt County, accounts for 53% of greenhouse gas emissions countywide. Stationary combustion refers to the use of fuels in homes, propane and natural gas to heat and cool homes. That is another significant source of emissions. Electricity consumption is up there as well. Livestock accounts for 13% of emissions in Humboldt County. Industrial sources, 6%. Solid waste. This accounts for landfill emissions, as well as there's only one landfill in Humboldt County and it's now closed. So it accounts for emissions from that closed landfill, as well as emissions from waste that is generated within the county, but processed elsewhere. And then less significant sources would be wastewater treatment and leaked refrigerants. This is another look at the data from the inventory. I'd like to show this to you because it answers some questions people often have about some of the major sources of emissions. So starting at the bottom, you can see the breakdown of natural gas versus electricity. And moving up, you can see here that gasoline powered vehicles are responsible for the highest share of vehicle emissions in Humboldt County, with diesel fueled vehicles being another significant source. This is a breakdown of that 2015 countywide inventory showing, where emissions are attributed to by jurisdiction. And you can see Rio Dell is responsible, or 1% of countywide emissions are generated within Rio Dell, and that is pretty closely related to just Rio Dell's share of the countywide population. We also looked at 1990 emissions levels, and that's what we based our target off of. So I thought I'd show this. Focusing on the blue bars, these are the 1990 levels. The two different sets of bars represent what the data looks like when you include industrial sources and when you take them out. And the reason why we look at the data without industrial sources there is because climate action plans often don't address industrial emissions because they're regulated by other agencies and they're just sort of out of jurisdictional control. And the goal with a climate action plan is jurisdictional control of a city or a county. And the goal is to look at emissions that are within the sphere of influence of a city or county. That at least is the general practice. And looking at the difference here on the left between these two bars, between 1990 and 2015, we see that emissions dropped significantly when you include point sources, industrial sources, and the emissions are more similar. It's less of a precipitous drop when you don't include industrial sources. And that basically reflects the fact that lots of industrial facilities closed between 1990 and 2015 in Humboldt County. So these are the state greenhouse gas targets that most climate action plan targets are based off of. The state had a goal to reach 1990 levels of emissions by 2020. And for 2030, the state's goal is to get 40% below 1990 levels of emissions. And by 2045, they have the quite ambitious goal of reaching statewide carbon neutrality by 2045. The staff that are working on the climate action plan at the county and Oreglo Coast Energy Authority, we are recommending that we pursue a target of 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. And if the council is interested, I have some charts that show what it would look like to meet that target. We still haven't decided on a target, and I think that's going to be more of an iterative process once we speak more with city councils throughout the county and speak more with the public and talk more about it internally. But this is the first recommendation for a target for the climate action plan. This is a slide that shows the different emissions trajectories. And this will take a little while to break down, I think. And so I'm going to move on. And if someone wants me to come back to this, if anyone is interested in seeing what it would look like to meet that target, 40% below 1990 levels, I'll just come right back to it and we can talk about it. But I'd rather move on and start talking about some of the actual measures that are potentially included in the climate action plan. Sorry, I moved back. These are some of the different sectors that the climate action plan is targeting. Land use planning, that relates to greenhouse gas emissions because it relates to people's transportation choices. Low carbon transportation, that would refer to electric vehicles as well as alternatives like walking and biking and public transit. Important to reducing electricity emissions and stationary combustion emissions that we just saw would be actions to improve the efficiency of buildings and facilities. And renewable energy generation is, of course, important as well. Waste prevention, reduction, and diversion, and carbon sequestration. Carbon sequestration refers to basically not just trees, but nature's ability to store carbon within biomass naturally. So it sequesters carbon from the atmosphere and stores it in a stable matter. And in that way, it counteracts greenhouse gas emissions. These are some, this is a high level overview of some of the measures that are included in our first pass at the climate action plan draft. So measures to incentivize a more increased density of development in more urban areas in Humboldt County who are interested in this type of measure. It would look like rethinking certain aspects of zoning codes, for instance, or perhaps providing incentives to developers to include more housing or commercial units within their proposed development. Adding additional bike lanes, that could be seen as sort of a no-brainer to if the goal is to improve people's ability to bike around in Humboldt County. Promoting electric vehicles, provide more opportunity for transit use, increase the use of low carbon liquid fuels like renewable diesel, switch from natural gas to electricity in buildings, increasing energy efficiency of buildings. And I'm happy to talk about any of these more because we've taken a really good look at all of these different ideas and have lots of ideas for implementing them. So assist with zoning and implementation of small renewable energy development, supporting Road Coast Energy Authority Repower Humboldt goals. That's referring to a plan that RCEA has to sort of move Humboldt County towards a more 100% renewable energy future. Promote forest and agricultural land stewardship. There's a whole chapter in our climate action plan about that, improving resilience and improving carbon sequestration in our natural lands. Reduce construction and event waste and expand green waste programs. So these are some of the ideas that we're kicking around for the climate action plan. To close, I have a timeline for the remaining tasks with the climate action plan. So we're completing a measure selection spreadsheet and participating in a process to choose what measures will end up in each city's cap and the county's cap. So this is a regional climate action plan, but ultimately it's up to each city and the county what they want to include in their portion of the climate action plan. So we're working to create this spreadsheet. We have created a spreadsheet that is basically like a big calculator that shows the amounts of emissions reductions that you can get from certain actions. And each city is taking that spreadsheet and they're putting in different possibilities for how they will commit or not commit to different actions. And then the spreadsheet allows them to see if they're close to meeting the target. Next, once we sort of work through that process more, is to work on a target selection process. And we also sort of concurrently with that are reviewing the administrative draft of the climate action plan, which is our internal draft. It's sort of like a first draft. I'd like to think of it before the first public draft that we'll be releasing. And after we review that internal draft, the next step would be to publish a draft climate action plan. And that's when we would really hit the road and host public workshops in Rio Dell and other cities throughout the county, and perhaps engage other stakeholder groups who haven't participated in the public workshops we've held so far. Now, I mentioned that about the public workshops. So the next step would be to review implementation and monitoring strategies, and then begin CEQA review. And once we have completed the CEQA process, that would be the time to take the climate action plan to local jurisdictions for adoption meetings. That's all of the slides that I have today. I think so. Thank you all for your time. And Michael Richardson is here to help me answer any questions that your council may have for us about the project. Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. Hopefully, maybe we can get a paper copy of it so we can kind of review it a little bit, but I will take then this to the council and ask if there are any questions. Council Member Carter?
No questions. I'd also be interested in a paper copy, just so I have that information so I can look into it on my own a little bit. But no questions from me. Thank you, Connor. That was a lovely presentation. You did a good job.
Thank you. Council Member Wilson?
Yes. Are we required by the state or federal government to meet any guidelines in this requirements that we have to reach a number of reduction for the city of Rio Dell?
Go ahead, Connor.
So the short answer is no, unless the city chooses to go down that qualified climate action plan route. If the climate action plan is used to streamline projects, streamline the CEQA review of projects, then yes, the jurisdiction is required to implement that climate action plan and reach the target. But if the city or the county goes down the other route, then essentially the climate action plan is just like any planning document, and it's a set of policies that the city has adopted, but there's no binding state law requiring the city to reach the target or requiring the city to show progress towards the target.
Well, did I understand you correctly to say that that Rio Dell we were 1%? Was that for total greenhouse emissions?
Yes, that's right.
So that's what we would be targeting reducing, is that 1%?
Yes, that's right.
I'm sorry, Frank, what did you say out there? Were you?
I just question. I didn't really make any more comment. I'm good. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. Is there any real benefit to the city if or the county to get a qualified climate action plan versus unqualified?
Yeah, I'll pass that to Michael. Thanks for the question.
Okay. Yeah, the qualified nature of a climate action plan is important to developers for projects that involve discretionary permits that the city might issue for projects. Like for instance, if you're going to have a new commercial development that required a subdivision of a property, that subdivision may be subject to the California Environmental Quality Act requirements, and having a qualified cap would enable you to streamline the permitting for that development.
What exactly does that mean, streamlining the permit process?
Yeah, that's right.
What exactly does that mean? I mean, if you got a streamlined permit process, you don't have to comply with certain things? What? I'm a bit confused.
No, it just makes it easier for the developer to reach their goal of securing all of the permits. Right now, CEQA, the Environmental Quality Act, has hurdles that developers have to jump over in order to get their project approved, and having a qualified cap would lower the height of those hurdles. So it'd be an easier path for developers to get approval of their projects.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I just made my comment about liking to have a paper copy so we can actually look at it and think about it. Are there any are there any hands raised or emails sent in from the public?
Currently, I don't see any hands raised.
And there are no emails.
Okay.
Mayor Garnes, if I could just make a couple quick comments.
Absolutely.
In terms of what the city is doing right now in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, I want to just bring to light some recent changes in terms of the electricity consumption. The city was recently awarded a $295,000 allocation from Cal OES for PSPS resiliency. That funding, a portion of it will be going to approximately 50 kW in solar installations, both at City Hall and the Corporation Yard. So our electricity usage should be hopefully declining by a like amount. In addition, in terms of transportation fuels, which was the largest item there, as soon as our new police vehicles come online in the next month or two, 1/3 of the city of Rio Dell's police fleet will be hybrid vehicles with higher gas mileage related to it. So that technology has reached a point where it's cost effective essentially to purchase that type of vehicle with gas prices and whatnot. And over the life of the vehicle, you'd be nearly doubling the gas mileage for those particular vehicles. In addition to which, as the council focuses on economic development and capturing what's called economic leakage, the more services that are provided locally here in Rio Dell, obviously the less trips people are going to have to make to surrounding communities for regular supplies. One of the biggest challenges for us is going to be in terms of natural gas. The Corporation Yard, the belt press dryer, which certainly helps with odor control out of the wastewater treatment plant, uses quite a bit of natural gas. It's probably the city organization itself. It's the largest consumer and producer of greenhouse gases. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye open to see what opportunities there are for feasibility studies in terms of, are there alternative belt presses or systems that rely less on natural gas resources. So with that, I'll return it back to the mayor.
Thank you, City Manager. This is a receive and file. So I just wanted to thank you both for coming and for explaining and for the presentation. We really appreciate it, and welcome. You're welcome to come back anytime.
Well, thanks very much. It's been a great pleasure to work with Kevin and Kyle on this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now we will move on to the presentation workshop discussion on solid waste agreement and the opportunity for universal collection. City Manager, and that's page 64 of our packets.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. So with this one, also, Rosa, we're going to need to enable Linda to share her PowerPoint. So we'll need to enable screen share on that. As we do that, I'm going to just quickly do a little bit of a recap here. So the a question and answer workshop was held with the council and Ecology Eel River to discuss universal collection, and there is a Q&A posted on the city's website. That meeting happened back on March 16th of this year. That's something we'll go over in the presentation. We have also, going back to where this discussion kind of officially started, back in December 3rd of 2019, the City Council received correspondence from the Rio Dell Nuisance Advisory Committee endorsing the concept of universal collection and universal recycling services. So prior to that, the Nuisance Advisory Committee received a presentation regarding universal collection, and really one of the main takeaways from that presentation was this economy of scale between the city of Rio Dell. In order to implement universal collection, we'd really need partners in that effort in order for it to proceed in an economical and most efficient fashion. So back on November 18th of 2020, the Nuisance Advisory Committee also issued correspondence to the city of Fortuna, also endorsing the adoption of universal collection and recycling. So as that process has begun in Fortuna, it opens up an opportunity for Rio Dell to adopt universal collection in the most efficient manner possible. One of the concerns being that you know, if we went alone, doing universal collection would not be cost effective. And then if we miss this opportunity, the potential cost of adopting universal collection down the road as state regulations increase becomes more costly. So, so with that, again, on March 2nd of this year, there was another meeting that the council had to discuss the calendar moving forward for universal collection consideration. The council adopted that calendar. And this is our second main public workshop. It's just a discussion period for questions and answers, and to try to get input in the formulation of a ordinance towards universal collection. So the next meeting scheduled regarding universal collection is scheduled for June 1st, 2021, and that would be the first hearing on a draft ordinance. So ordinances go through, unless they're an emergency, they typically go through two public hearings. So again, the first June 1st meeting is not the official action meeting, but is the presentation of the ordinance, proposed ordinance. It's also an opportunity to amend that ordinance. And then really the most important date in terms of commitment towards this, according to the current calendar, is June 15th of this year. And that would be the second public hearing on the draft ordinance and the adoption of that ordinance. So, so folks at home, want to take note of those next 2 dates coming up. That's more when kind of the rubber hits the road, where a more fleshed out, close to final presentation is provided on June 1st. So with that, hopefully Linda is hooked on to the PowerPoint, and
Kyle, unfortunately, I don't have the ability to do it from where I am. I did send you the PowerPoint to your laptop. But I will say, as far as the PowerPoint presentation goes, it is a recap of what the SB 1383 regulations are, as well as other diversion regulations that are coming up that Rio Dell does and has responsibility as a jurisdiction to meet. We also recapping some of the discussions about what universal garbage means and what the current systems look like and what they will look like if those terms are adopted. I will say we were able to address all the questions that were brought to the council at the time. And let's see, Kyle has that there. Good. There we are. Thank you, Kyle. Again, thanks. If you get it started, I can go on to the next slide.
Give me just 1 second here.
Okay, begin. There you are.
All right, there we go.
I'm kind of good at it too. I would go to, again, we're talking about City of Rio Dell, California solid waste regulations and universal collection service discussion. Again, what is a universal collection? And basically what that is a requirement that's placed by ordinance and by contract that a universal collection that requires all households and businesses have garbage services. And why now? Well, our franchise agreement, we still have a few years left on it. But we are currently working on a franchise agreement that's ending with the city of Ferndale on 2021. So there's a little bit of expediency with them. And we're also working with the city of Fortuna because there's some regulatory drivers where they need to make, they have to make, be compliant with 1383 in the years coming up. Franchise amendments will be needed in order to comply with the law, and that's another reason to do that. And also, as Kyle said earlier, that there's some regional efficiencies if we're able to partner Rio Dell, Ferndale, and with Fortuna's changes. Next slide.
Linda, just before we leave this slide, I just want to clarify, Rio Dell's specific franchise agreement with Ecology Eel River concludes at the end of 2026. So the 2021 timeline is related to our regional partners.
Right. So our current overview of services is that currently we have optional MSW is municipal solid waste collection. That's just a fancy word for garbage that's out there in your community. We have every other week, it's EOW, recycling and optional organics, which is a green waste program. We have bulky item pickups, but they're for an extra charge. So a person could call us and we would come out to a person's address to pick out something large like a couch or a mattress or something. And but there is a charge for us to go out there. The customers provide their garbage containers. So it's a store-bought container, usually just of whatever, size that accommodates what our current rates are. And there's also senior prepaid bags that are available for people to utilize to be able to cut costs. So that's sort of like, they fill up a bag and then put it out whenever it's full. And we also provide city can services where we service all the city cans that are out there. Those are the municipal cans that are soon to be replaced, and we go by and we pick those up. And the Mother's Day cleanup event is another thing that comes under the current contract that's part of the current services that Ecology offers. And we also service that public recycling bin that's behind you on City Hall there. So what we're proposing with the universal garbage service is that all the residents would be required to have garbage collection. Of course, there's going to be some as we'll discuss later, be an options for people to opt out if there's some extenuating circumstances. Every other week recycling services and optional organics, that's the green waste program. And then like in other areas that are encircling you, they have included into their rates 2 bulky item pickups per year. So you get 2 2-yard pickups a year. So that's probably the equivalent of a refrigerator and a couch. So you could get something like that picked up twice a year. And then we would provide the garbage cans, so they'd all be uniform looking out there in your community. And we'd also provide recycling containers. Everybody would get a 96-gallon recycling container. I believe with the old operator, they provided the 64 gallons. So there's still be some out there, but we'd be trying to replace them to 96 gallon in the future. And then it would be up to the council of whether or not there would be a discount of a 20% discount to seniors or low income folks, that perhaps maybe they'd be able to show that they're low income as a result, and be able to document that from, maybe the CARES program with PG&E. We'd still pick up the city cans, maybe as I know that you have more cans that are going to be placed out there. Maybe it'd be, as you grow, maybe we come and pick some, other sites up. And we'd also provide some cleanup bins that could be used for code enforcement cases, or maybe some river cleanup, events that the city may want to hold. That's what the universal services would be looking like. And those are pretty much consistent with what is around you in the county right now, except in the county, they may have a little bit more higher frequency of recycling and green waste collection. So I thought would be kind of like a good thing to talk about with some folks that may not be familiar with franchise agreements and why Ecology is the garbage collection company in your community. Basically, a franchise agreement is a negotiated contract that happens between a municipality and a solid waste collection provider that grants the provider the right to be picking up certain materials at the curbside. So usually there's a term that period happens. The city goes out and they say, this is what we need, and the contractor puts together a cost, and that's what we're doing for this universal service. And provide you a cost and a list of what the services are, and the city manipulates them depending on what the community needs. Usually there's a fee that's a franchise fee that the franchise holder, which would be us, the contractor, pays to the city to be able to operate in the city, and that's usually to provide waste education to folks, or to provide funds to help maintain the infrastructure for where we're driving our trucks up and down the street, those kind of things. And cities are able to do this. It's authorized under the California Government Code, section 66755, that declares that any municipality who is acting within the public interest can authorize and require local agencies to make adequate provisions for handling solid waste at the curbside. So that's what we're doing. So I just thought that it might be a refreshment. Sometimes people don't understand that it's that the contract is a contract for one contractor in your community. So I thought I'd just back up with that a little bit in the presentation. Next slide. So the regulatory drivers that are out there for the jurisdictions in the community, I know Kyle went over this last time, but there's several laws that are out there that's a requirement for diversion activities. One is AB 341, which is a requirement that makes businesses, that requires businesses that generate over 4 cubic yards of garbage per week have recycling services. And that's one of the things that's out there that the state regulates. AB 1826 requires businesses to arrange for organics collection services based on the amount of waste generated per week. One of the ones that go to the general public is AB 939. That's been around for quite a while. That's the one that most folks have heard of, that was a requirement of jurisdictions to make a 50% diversion by the year 2000. That has been upped since then to be more like 75% by the year 2020. The new one that is most is the one that's of most interest to the communities up here right now is SB 1383. And that's the one that establishes targets to achieve a 75% reduction of organic waste by the year 2025. The interesting thing about that one is it's interesting that you had the climate, you had the greenhouse gas guy and the climate action plan on earlier. So this is sort of relates to that. Can you go next? I thought, Kyle, maybe we'd play the video again. If you could press that start planning now button there, it might play this.
Oh, it didn't. It doesn't.
It's not linked any longer. It's a pretty complex law.
Why don't at the end, let me see if I can pull up the video towards the end at the end of the presentation.
Right. Okay. So it's a pretty complex law. And you see that tile there. I say the tile with the garbage truck there. That's one of many tiles. There's maybe 6 tiles that are jurisdiction requirements where they need to meet a mandate. The city of Rio Dell is going to be required to meet the mandate of organics collection at the curbside, but they get a couple of years reprieve. Kyle will probably be putting in a request for a waiver with the state, so it gives you some time, which is going to be kind of important because this community does not have an organics recycling facility located in Humboldt County or any place near. But one of the caveats of the law is that it's going to require that there is universal collection, and their universal collection that is supposed to be either one can, which is the one can waste, which would be if we had a destination to take it, where you would take it to what is called a dirty MRF, where they would separate all the materials out of the one can and try to find recycling out of that. We don't have a facility like that in Humboldt County or anywhere nearby to send that material. The next type of container would be similar to that, but it would be a dirty MRF plus recycling. So that isn't available to us. So the thing that we would be thinking that's most appropriate for this community is to have a 3-cart system, which would be garbage, blue can for recycling, and green can for organics. We'd be starting it out with the organics would be a green waste collection, but we could move that into a more full-blown organics collection system where you'd be able to take other organics like food waste or things that we don't have a facility right now to take. But that would be the intention for it. So as soon as one of those things came online, we could pivot those cans pretty easily to that system. What's next? So the implementation dates. This is the implementation dates for the 1383 as it comes into effect the year 2020, January 1st, 2020 for communities that have more than 75 people per square mile, or people who are above a certain population threshold. Right now, Rio Dell and Ferndale are under that threshold, and they could get a couple of years reprieve from meeting the January 1st, 2020 deadline. But in the meantime, if you don't meet it, then you have to demonstrate that you're making progress toward meeting that goal. So this is a timeline this is a slide that came from Cal Recycle, where they passed the law September 2026. I'm sorry, September 2016. That's when it was passed, and they've been working on rulemaking up until last year, after the regulations were adopted. So they come into effect January 1st, 2022. And then January 1st, 2024, regulations are going to require that local governments take enforcement actions to make sure people are complying with organics collection. Again, you guys get a couple more years for that, but it's important for communities the sizes of Rio Dell and Ferndale. It's kind of good that you're in proximity to areas like the county and Fortuna, so that, you know, if there's any chance for efficiencies, that we can take advantage of it, because they'll need to comply sooner than you. Next, please. So these are the tiles that I was speaking of earlier. The garbage truck is just one tile. That is just one activity that's a requirement of jurisdictions to meet. The other tiles are that the jurisdictions need to establish edible food recovery programs. There's efforts like that going on in the county right now. They've been privy to in some of our local task force meetings. They need to conduct education and outreach to the community, procure recyclable and recovered organic products, secure access to recycling and edible food recovery capacity, and monitor compliance and conduct enforcement. So these are things that come down from the state of California, and we're trying to help you with the first tile. All those things, and the first tile is the one that will take the longest. Next, please. Again, these are the jurisdiction requirements that is going to show that there's meeting of compliance. The first one is a passage of ordinances by the year 2020 by the local agencies, by jurisdictions such as yourselves, and before you it'd be Fortuna. Compliance monitoring and education programs will be required by the year 2022, the activities be done between 2022 and 2024. And compliance monitoring and enforcement would be done after 2024. Next, please. So the next steps toward compliance is that we want to run toward getting the first tile done, which is to establish, you know, a program or a direction toward getting universal garbage service. So the first step of that is to receive the public input to see what kind of services that we want to implement, and that will lead to amending our franchise agreement. At the same time, or around the same time, there'll be an ordinance adopted, and then we'll implement the universal collection service. We're thinking that will come online, if all goes to plan, January 1st, 2023. So next, is there a next slide? And I just went through the contract. So we did take questions and answers from the March 16 meeting. They're on the City of Rio Dell website. I don't know, it seemed like there's quite a few on there that it was kind of cumbersome to bring up on the slide. I don't know, Kyle, if you have the ability to get.
Yeah, if you'll give me a moment here, and Linda, you just became muted, but if you give me a moment here, I'm gonna try to see if I can pull that up and screen share that as well.
Okay.
Okay, it should be up on the screen now.
Okay, so some of the questions was, how much would it cost for a mandatory universal collection? We're estimating 9% sounds pretty scary. But what we're estimating is that we're going to be going from, you know, the standard rate of a 32 gallon can from $28.59 to $30.48 per month. And that, mind you, that's going to include the two bulky item pickup collections and recycling at the curbside. The next question was, would there be a participation exclusion process for properties that are hard to access by Ecology vehicles? Now, this is, there's usually an exclusion process that the cities like to have for their contracts when they go universal for situations just like this. It would be for hard to access areas, and also for residents who produce just essentially no garbage, and people who can demonstrate that they've got it covered under different means, like through high diversion behaviors at their own home. There are a few other exclusion areas, like if you have a property that has several units, the city can decide that one unit might have one garbage receptacle and one recycling receptacle, so there won't be, each unit would not have a requirement for having garbage service. Will there be discounts provided for seniors and or low income households? Now that's possible that we can do the discount. It'll be at the discretion of the city council. We could do that. There is a cost for the system no matter what. So, whatever discounts we provide to others, it would have to be passed on to the other ratepayers. But that's certainly a consideration we can take into account. Are there any provisions for customers who generate? We already went over that. And the distance for the exclusions, it seems like a lot of them are about exemptions. I think exemptions are something that we can consider on a case-by-case basis, and the city can make a determination of what they can consider an exemption or not. So why is the proposed, thank you, Kyle, so I could see where I am. Rates in the subscriber base for Rio Dell will double. Why isn't it cheaper? Well, it's the economy of scale is factored into that, into the rates. We're going to be setting up a rate process. It's a little bit different than what the city of Rio Dell and the other communities are accustomed to. We're going to do a total transparency type of cost of what the programs are. We're going to lay out what percentage of the costs go to disposal, recycling, processing, labor, what part of it is the franchise fee, what part of it is Ecology profit. All those things can be set out there. And so, we've had to make some assumptions when we're putting together a universal collection system, using just, the information that we have. What we're proposing to do is to take a look at what our assumptions are 4 years after the services begin, and check and see what the costs actually are. So if we overcharge, we can adjust, and if we're undercharging, we can adjust there too. So then that way there's a transparent way that people can take a look at how the rates are being determined. Who's responsible for paying for service if the tenant fails? The jurisdictions that have universal garbage do place the responsibility of payment of the bills on the property owner. And what normally happens is that property owners will, if they have a tenant, they'll add the garbage rate onto the rental fees for their tenants. If they don't want to do that and the tenants are paying their fees, we do have a communication system with the communities. We let Rio Dell know, the city of Rio Dell know, the owner and the tenants know that we'll be contacting the property owner if the bills aren't paid, and we'll take care of it that way. If they aren't paid, then there is always a process of putting liens on people's properties, but we try everything we can not to do that. Some people prefer to pay it that way, though, so you can't go by that. If I take my garbage to the transfer station once a month, it's cheaper for me to do it that way. Why should I have to participate in the program? Well, we've found that we're able to track from where people are bringing their garbage, and we've been able, we have, when people come to the scales, we ask them what their origins are. That's the reason why we do it, so that we can tell how many tons are coming from each jurisdiction. And with that, we can tell how much they're paying for the garbage service. If people were going 7 days a week, they would actually be paying every 7 days to get rid of their garbage as state law mandates. They'd be paying more per month than they would if they were to pay for the service at the curbside that we're proposing. And I think that pretty much a lot of the questions are redundant. Do you see anything different, Kyle?
I am looking.
They're talking about, we're going to offer a number of size receptacles. We're thinking that we may even offer, we have 20 and 32 gallon size receptacles. For garbage, we're thinking that we may offer some other sizes in addition to that, like 60 and 90 gallons, so people don't have to drag in a ton of different carts in if they want to upsize rather than not have a 32 gallon size. And they'll all have wheels like they have in Eureka. I think that's about it. And the timeline again is January 1st, 2023. And that's when we would start charging the rate. So I don't know if there's any other questions that we can add to this list, but these are the ones that the questions that we got at the last meeting.
All right. Rosa, if we have that tile that shows how folks can raise their hand and call in, we might put that up. So,
do you want me to go ahead with the council, Kyle?
yes.
Okay. So I will open questions up to the council. Councilmember Wilson?
Yes, a couple questions. You made a couple references to the 20% discount for the seniors. Is this a cost that's either borne by the city or by the other ratepayers? Is that what you were saying?
It's sort of, it would be the other ratepayers. And the 20% doesn't, that we just picked a number that a 20% discount out of the air, just as an example. It can be any number, but garbage collection costs what it costs. And so how we distribute the rates, it depends on what kind of input we get from the community.
So then it would be necessary probably for the city to write it into an ordinance that would say if we're going to give seniors or low income people, whatever, a 20% discount, then that cost has to be spread out amongst the other ratepayers. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if that's done by ordinance, but normally under our franchise agreement, the amendment to our franchise agreement will spell out how the rates are distributed. It will start at a base year. What we'll do is we'll start at a base year and we'll say, this is how the rates are distributed, and the council could change it later on down the road, but that's where it stays. And if all things are good to go, then we just go from there and build from that. So if there's any increases to things like disposal costs or decreases, then they're applied universally.
Maybe I'm asking the question wrong, but whether it's done by ordinance or whether it's done by a franchise agreement, in order to give one entity of the city a discount, the other ratepayers have to pick that up.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to get the answer.
That is the truth. That it gets distributed to, it's one cost and it gets distributed over everybody. If there's a discount, then it weights the cost onto the others that don't get discounts.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get the answer to be spelled out. The other question is, somewhere in your explanation, maybe earlier, maybe I misunderstood it, but you made a remark about the garbage rate or the collection fee could actually double Did I hear that wrong?
That was a question by one of the people in the public was asking why, if you're doubling your customer base, because we're going for about 40, about half the people in Rio Dell currently have garbage service. So we'd be doubling the number of garbage subscribers. They were asking, well, if you're doubling it, shouldn't that cut the price in half? That's what they were asking. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio kind of thing when you're determining
I
the
misunderstood what you said. So
yeah.
that
I may not have been clear too.
okay, I appreciate you clarifying that. I think those are all my questions.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. Linda, currently for our seniors and folk that don't generate a whole lot of garbage, you sell to us and we sell to the community, the, I don't know, 5-gallon bag, white bags, plastic bags. Is that something that's going to continue after 23?
Probably the answer would be that we would not. The kind of trucks that we'll be using to do universal collection, they're not figured so that you could pick up bags of garbage and because they have a really high, they go over the top of the truck, so it's hard to, it would be very difficult to get those kind of bags in there that way. So it's not a bag friendly kind of garbage service. Collection service. To make it the most efficient way to pick it up is in these automated trucks.
Also, you indicated that there would potentially be smaller cans of the 15 to gallon size or something like that. Is that a possibility?
Yes.
But what I want to do is I want to make sure that as much as possible the playing field is leveled for seniors and folk that don't generate a whole lot of trash.
I understand that. There is the opportunity to getting a 20-gallon can, which is usually the can that we use for service, senior service in other areas. Some areas elect to offer a senior discount for seniors that, or low-income people. Other people, others don't, and it is a less fee for that.
Thank you. That's all I have at this time, Mayor Garnes.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. I guess this is maybe more a Kyle question. I know it said that at the time the agenda was published, we didn't have any word from Ferndale or Fortuna yet. So I was just wondering if that had changed or if we still didn't know where they stood on this.
So I cannot speak for either entity. I do know that they have had meetings in both jurisdictions. And maybe Linda could give us an update on where she perceives the other jurisdictions being at.
Well, the city of Ferndale's first meeting about it with a public workshop is tomorrow night. We've already had a public workshop with the city of Fortuna, and their council and community members have questions, and we're at the same point as we are with you right now with answering those. The ideal thing is that everybody can get on the same page so that it can all move together in tandem so that the cost can be lowered for everyone. And we're hopeful about that and are dedicated to help that happen. They're looking at it again. The city of Fortuna is going to be having another meeting, I believe, next week on it. So we'll be answering more questions. So they're taking it seriously.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you. I had a citizen call me and ask me some questions that now I'm going to forward. Well, some of them have been answered, I believe, but one was about noise pollution actually, and about, the beeping in the morning. And was it going to be more than one day? Does it go from one day pickup from Rio Dell to like 3 days, or that kind of situation?
We're looking to do all of Rio Dell 1 day a week.
1 day? Awesome.
Yeah, so that it would be, you'd have garbage service the same day as your recycling. There may be situations where you have some commercial businesses that have need for having more than one service, but those would be isolated.
Okay. And wait, let me think. 1 day, and well, it's gone now, so it's left me. So we'll move on to because I actually believe that there's an email from John, so I will let that email speak for itself. But so are there public comments? We have emails, I know for sure. So City Clerk, you could start with the emails first.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Garnes.
Thank you.
Okay, we received so far 5 emails, and I'll start with them. I'll start reading them by the order they were received.
Thank you.
Okay, the first one was from Catherine Edwards, and it starts off by saying, "Do not vote for this policy. I'm against it. There are many people who don't have enough money for food and medicine. To add this to their budget is criminal. You have a person on staff to deal with the very few residents that have trashy yards. Abatement person, right? Let the abatements deal with the messes and do not punish the rest of us citizens for the lazy, messy few." That's the first one. The next one is from Esther Isaacs. "Dear City Council, I'm writing to express my opposition to a mandatory garbage service. I have lived in Rio Dell for 7 years and have always taken care of my garbage myself. It's much easier and more cost-effective for me to take my own garbage to the dump. I don't think that the citizens of Rio Dell should be punished for the actions of few. Deal with the people that are causing the problem and leave the rest of us alone. I feel that mandatory garbage service is just one more freedom that's being taken away from us. Hopefully, there's another solution to this problem. I do not support mandatory garbage collection. Sincerely." The next one is from Robert and Chelsea Orr. And it says, "I know the Facebook trolls want residents to attack your trash proposal. However, I would like to thank you. Finally, there is someone brave enough to do something that has needed to be done for years. This may not stop those who are illegally dumping around town, but it will give them an incentive to decrease or desist. This proposal eliminates a major excuse residents are using to collect trash in their yards versus disposing of it properly. I would gladly pay a little more to see our city raise its standard of living. Thank you." And the fourth one is from Michael Porter. And he says, "As I've seen in Rio Dell, there are a few people that don't give a hoot about taking their trash to the dump. So you want to force everyone to use trash pickup. Those people won't use that either, and they don't care. I can't see how this is going to benefit the city overall. Now that we have a code enforcement officer, that should be up to her to look into those problems, not force everyone to have trash pickup. I may be off base, but what happened with fixing the streets and with the sales tax money?" And the last one is from Jonathan Welch. "Mandatory trash is fraud. I've paid for my trash to be collected curbside my entire life, but others can't afford to. Your plan of forcing them to do business with a private corporation is immoral. What next? Mandatory health insurance? I live in a free country, and besides jury duty, I'm not required to do anything. You put pressure on the slobs to clean up their own mess and leave the rest be." And let me check and see if there's any further emails. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, City Clerk. Are there any hands raised?
There are not, but as a city resident, am I allowed to speak?
I'm sorry?
As a resident of the city of Rio Dell, am I allowed to speak?
Absolutely.
I just want to comment. I just want to comment that I understand that this is regulations down the way, And if this is going to be more cost efficient than waiting until the state makes us do this, I think the city really should look into it just to be cost efficient.
Thank you. And so there are no other hands raised?
No, there's currently no
Okay.
answer.
Emails?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the other, one of the other comments that was brought to my attention and came back to me was, I think more actually for the city, was regarding bins that we have an ordinance that requires everyone to have their garbage bins out of sight. And what happens with people who don't have the ability to have them out of sight? And then, of course, how are we going to enforce the out of sight, which would be a code enforcement situation. But that was another one of the questions about the bins being, because of the ordinance that Rio Dell has. And so that's actually a city question, not one for you, Linda. And so at some point, hopefully in our public meetings, that could be answered. So I do believe that this was a receive and file. And if there are no other questions from council, staff, or public, I believe that we have come to the end of this discussion. I appreciate you, Linda. I think we all appreciate you being here and answering questions and being available to us to answer questions. It is really appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me. And anytime there's any questions, if anybody has, I'm available for that.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you very much. And so we are now going to move on from universal collection to the presentation and discussion on draft economic development goals and actions to achieve economic, there is no end of word, economic resiliency. I'm going to just make a word up because it's missing a word right there. So anyway, city manager, that's our packet, page 83. And city manager, are you, okay. Or, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. So as the mayor stated, the draft plans and goals are located on page 84 of your sheet of your agenda. If you will give me if you will bear with me for just a minute, I'm going to attempt to pull them up on the screen. Just need a couple more minutes, sorry.
Mayor Garnes, point of preference, could we take a 5-minute recess at this time?
Absolutely. We'll have a 5-minute recess and we'll return back. Well, let's make it 6, so it's 8:10 even.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Okay, are we all back? All right. So city manager, take it away, please.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. The ad hoc committee for economic development, which is Mayor Garnes, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, have been working on, along with staff, on the draft goals and actions to achieve economic development and resiliency. We have met with Scott Adair from Humboldt County Economic Development, and as well as Gerbeck Sahota from Cal ED, which works with a lot of smaller jurisdictions towards the goals of economic development. What is before you is really kind of a preliminary goals and actions for an initial steps towards economic development. One of the things that was made really clear to us is economic development is a process that occurs over time. It's not simply one report or one effort. It's something that is revisited and built upon. So this is really essentially a starting point for the next wave of economic development. I will try to keep this short. This is just a briefing item. We will be coming back for the council's next meeting for action to turn this draft item into a non-draft document, as well as some potential recommended actions for the council to take. So we'll just do the brief overview of the material. With any economic development plan, you want to establish goals, and we were encouraged to kind of reverse engineer where we wanted to be, and then reverse engineer that from that point to develop action plans to achieve those goals. So amongst the 5 goals listed is the maximization of the economic potential of Rio Dell, which is a bedroom community. That is one of the fundamental, contexts of Rio Dell is its nature as a bedroom community, historically for one specific industry, even one specific company such as Palco. But we want to try to maximize the economic potential of this community. Create a more visually attractive community. Visually attractive communities attract investment, attract interest, increase city revenues to maintain and enhance public services. So public services are integral in terms of achieving economic development, whether that's police services, fire services, planning, you name it, water and sewer infrastructure. We have made significant investments in those areas and continue to do so, including streets, which is the council's #1 goal. We want to create a reason for outsiders to visit and to patronize businesses in town, not just serve a local Rio Dell residents, but encourage visitors both from the surrounding community and also visitors up and down the 101. And then also create a team with resources empowered to accomplish those goals with consistent effort over time. So we were encouraged to create a mission statement. And so that mission statement was summarized as follows. We will be successful when business space vacancy rates decline, more outsiders visit, and city revenues increase. We will become the town that businesses and individuals want to invest in. So that statement basically summarizes the entire effort towards what we're trying to do. Now, the plan includes some pretty specific directives to pursue, and I won't go through each of them, but I'll just highlight the first one. So reduce downtown vacancy rates. So we heard from also President of the Chamber of Commerce, Nick Angeloff, that our goal needs to be specifically reduce downtown vacancy rates. So there are a number of ways that those directives can be achieved. One of those would be to implement a city-funded facade improvement programs with grants and loans for facade renovations along Wildwood Avenue, the main commercial corridor of Rio Dell. Obviously there's several other ideas, including walkability, the concept of phantom art galleries, off-street parking for long-term growth, purchasing, for example, some of the properties in need of extensive rehabilitation. One example would be the old BP gas station, and remediating the pollution on site to make it available for development. To work on the future of the Eagle Prairie Bridge, to make sure that Caltrans is prioritizing that bridge and making sure that it's seismically resilient, since one of the #1 threats to this community and to the broader state of California and the West Coast is seismic in nature. And if that bridge does go down, it's highly unlikely that the state of California would pick up the tab to rebuild it, including developing and implementing mural programs and other ideas. This is certainly not an exhaustive selection of options to reduce downtown vacancy rates, but is a start in this effort, and including creating defined objectives with achievable results. So we go through increasing the number of out-of-town visitors and strategies regarding that, increasing the quality of life for residents. More and more important are parks and open spaces. And we see a lot of our neighbors who've done a very successful job in economic development, really investing in public spaces and parks and facilities. Providing quality data to decision makers, staff, investors, and the community. So that involves implementing metrics to measure the success of economic development strategies. That includes conducting studies through third-party professional analysts who can identify perhaps leakage studies. That information then can be used both by this council and your role as decision makers in the community, be used by staff, by members of the public, and by investors to identify, potential opportunities for investment in the community. We need to do a SWOT analysis, a comprehensive SWOT analysis. We also need to capitalize on the strengths and opportunities. There's been actually a lot of progress related to economic development over the past few years. And certainly one of the things that we were encouraged to do is to play to those strengths and let them lead the way. So for example, the #1 leader of investment into the business infrastructure of Rio Dell right now is the cannabis industry. We have infrastructure investments that need to be made at the business park, at the Dinsmore Plateau, other locations in order to facilitate that investment process, which is currently underway and very active. There are also plans that the city is implementing through grant monies to identify plans for underutilized or vacant parcels. In particular, one of the interesting developments is that some of our housing grants that we have available to pursue also will include mixed use developments. In other words, a housing that also includes commercial spaces for residential markets and that sort of thing. So branding and identity, this is another very important component of it. Rio Dell really, is gifted by a lot of assets including the bridge, the bluffs, incredible weather. This is some of the best weather in the entire state right here. And what, so the idea is really to capitalize on the icons of the community, to create a positive image of the community. We know that all of the communities on the North Coast, not even just in Humboldt County, have issues. Rio Dell is no exception, but there are a lot of assets and advantages that Rio Dell has that have just never been put in play in relation to economic development. Creating a reason for people to pull off the freeway. Some communities have, for example, the world's largest frying pan as just a gimmick to have people pull off the freeway. They might decide to have lunch here or conduct business. And then there's just the issue of capacity enhancement, which we'll definitely be discussing with the council during the budget process of how we implement and sustain an economic development plan. So the last plan was published shortly before the 2008 economic recession. The city hit very hard times on top of hard times. And so we need to strategize on how we can consistently apply effort towards economic development when the city has been historically pretty reactive to development proposals that are before it. So how do we kind of move the ball forward in a way that is conducive to the community and that creates growth and jobs and opportunity and raises the quality of life. So part of the strategy is also to implement metrics. So we talked about reducing downtown vacancy rates and just regularly inventorying available commercial spaces in town, identifying which ones are vacant, and using that as a simple measure. There's some other technology that can be used to, for example, measure traffic activity and cell phone data in order to identify increases in traffic and whatnot. And we're really looking for kind of hard data that can be used to help measure the success of the program over an extended period of time that allows us to make changes, to recognize achievements, to recognize maybe where the plan falls short and adjust accordingly. So again, we've had a lot of recent successes in terms of economic development. Again, the built environment that we live in is important for pride, for just walkability. We've done quite a bit in terms of street and sidewalk work in the community, and the council's prioritized increasing that investment over the next 5 years. We've increased staffing in the police department. We have a fully staffed police department that is at a police officer to resident ratio that's more in the norm for communities in Humboldt County. We have had significant investments related to cannabis and cannabis taxes and additional tax revenue. The city's been quite successful in infrastructure grants. I'll give you just one example, was the Metropolitan Wells that produced a backup source of water. And that was as a result of the 2014 drought. When the city's water resources were in doubt and the city's water rights were curtailed, that creates a lot of concern and risk associated with making investments in the community. And so while we may, end up being curtailed by the state due to state law, we do have a backup source of water that was 95% grant funded by the state and federal government. So that type of infrastructure creates the environment for businesses to make investments in the community. In addition, we've increased code enforcement, and the result has been an improving image of the community for visitors, for residents, and pride in the community. What we will be discussing at the council's next meeting would be the implementation of the immediate action plan, which is carving out a chunk of this proposal in order to move forward with high priority items. So conducting a leakage study, the facade improvement program, pursuing available park funding and COVID monies for open space facilities, dog park, that sort of thing, to increase the recreational assets available to the city. We want to pursue some of our undeveloped parcels in town that potentially hold the key to really game-changing economic development in this community, not just for Rio Dell, but also that would impact positively the entire county. And then beautification and walkability, to form a committee of council members and members of the community interested in developing actionable plans for specific projects related to beautification. So everything from flower beds to reconfigurations of open space and whatnot would be under that a proposed committee. And then also, again, focusing in on where economic development right now in the town is underway and active, with building permits being pulled, developers regularly contacting the city to investigate what options are available. And that's really related to cannabis, the Dinsmore Plateau, the Humboldt Rio Dell Business Park development. We want to make sure that the city's development friendly, that we have signage, not necessarily even related to cannabis, but signage identifying the city, develop alternative options for developers to make and continue to make investments in the legal cannabis industry in Rio Dell. So with that, again, this is just a briefing, and I'll return it back to the mayor and see if there's any questions or comments.
Thank you, City Manager. I will open it up now to council. We'll start with Councilmember Carter.
Thank you, Mayor Gerns. I just want to say that when I sat and read this part of the packet, it made me so happy to think about all this stuff. So farmers markets and largest frying pans, amazing. So I also wanted to say that when you're forming a beautification and walkability committee, I would love to be on that committee. And
Okay.
my other question is, where do I go to share my ideas for branding and identity? Would that be here, or should I just come talk to Kyle sometime?
I think either one. I think and or both.
Yeah, and at our next council meeting, that would
Next
be
council meeting. Okay, I'll get them all ready.
All right.
And that's it for me. This looks like it was a lot of work. So thank you to the members of this committee for putting in the time and the energy to do this. It made me really happy. Okay.
All right. Yay. Councilmember Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garnes. And I agree with Councilmember Carter that obviously the subcommittee did a great job of researching this, and thank you for your work. It's well appreciated. It's still a big challenge to make these things come to light, and there's just a lot of potential there. One concern is the bridge. We do need to find some avenue to keep a hand on the state. If they, because I've heard stuff, if it fails, they'll just close it. They'll just close it off. They're not going to want to spend money to repair it. So I don't know where we get, if we can get it declared some kind of a historical structure that could get us some money to keep it safe and still open. Also, so I look forward to the next meeting to share ideas. I'm excited about some of the enthusiasm that you're generating. And again, I want to say thank you to all that brought this report to light.
All right, yay. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you for the opportunity to work with the mayor and staff on preparing this report, and a lot of praise needs to go to staff who, as always, does all the work, and us politicians get the credit for it. But, thank you, staff.
All right, thank you. And I too want to echo that sentiment, and I want to say to anyone who's listening right now, any member of the public that'll catch up during the next 2 weeks. If you are interested, hopefully there'll be an application process, or just reach out and let us know that you would want to be involved, like in the walkability and beautification, because we want citizens as well as a couple of council members, but it is going to be important that we all get involved, that the city, that the residents of the city get involved too. There's a lot of ideas out there, and we need to access as many as we can. I just got and I think this kind of falls under it, so I hope I'm not out of line, but I got a letter from a citizen, Cindy Treadwell, referencing back to a city newsletter where we had a good neighbor policy, and how we, back some years back, how we addressed issues based on just good neighbor policying versus fining or whatever, where we just reach out and we try and get our neighbors involved, and through that avenue we then make our city better and stronger and more attractive. So that is something that I think we will look at as well, going forward with this. So thank you everyone for everything you've done, staff. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I'm excited that the rest of the council's excited. So this is like really awesome. We're all like on the same page, and that's gonna only be good, I think, for the city as a whole. Are there any emails or raised hands?
There currently seems to be no raised hands.
And I see no emails.
Okay. Then I look forward to this being brought back, and everybody write down your ideas so we can talk about branding and all that kind of good stuff. And it's interesting, Councilmember Wilson, I actually brought that very thing up about the bridge today to the city manager. So about historical. So we'll look at, I think we'll try and look at everything we can look at to get this plan going. And so we will see it on the next week, on the next agenda. And now we will move on to the second reading by title only and approval of ordinance number 384-2021, amending the existing street dedication and improvement regulations, section 17.30.310, parens 2 and 6 of the Rio Dell Municipal Code. Page 91 in the packet. City Manager, City Community Development Director. Take your pick.
And I'll go ahead and hand over the next three items to Kevin.
All right.
All right, Mayor Garnes, members of the council, as you indicated, this item does start on page 91 of your packet. The first reading was presented at your April 6th meeting. Again, to summarize this, This is a minor modification to the street dedication requirements, which would allow the Public Works Director to waive those requirements. Under the current regulation, the applicants would actually have to petition the City Council or the Planning Commission in order to waive those requirements. Not as only is it time consuming, but it costs the applicants $250 in application fees. We see this as a permit or a streamlining process, and typically that's what we try to do here. We try to streamline the process for our citizens to make things easier for them. If you have any questions regarding the text amendments, and it is a minor text amendment, I'd be more than happy to answer them. If not, I would recommend you open up a public hearing, receive any comments that the public may have, and then adopt ordinance number 384-2021, amending the street dedication and improvement regulations, which again is section 17.30.310, subsection 2 and 6 of the Rio Dell Municipal Code.
Thank you. Thank you, Community Development Director Caldwell. I will open it up to the council. Mayor Pro Tem?
No questions, Mayor Garnes.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter?
Thank you. No questions from me. Makes sense.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Wilson?
No questions. I'm good.
And I have no questions. Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. I have no questions. Are there any hands raised or emails?
Currently, no hands raised.
No emails, thank you.
Thank you. Then I will ask for a motion to approve and adopt ordinance number 384-2021.
So moved by Johnson.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second by Carter.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Mayor Garnes.
Yes, motion carries 4-0. And we will move to the second reading and approval of ordinance number 385-2021, amending section/table 17.20.070 of the Rio Dell Municipal Code and resolution number 1484-2021. Amending table 1-2 of the land use plan to exclude agricultural structures in the lot coverage calculations, provided the applicant executes a surety bond to ensure the removal of all abandoned greenhouses on concrete slabs so as not to exceed the 10% lot coverage within 2 years of cessation of commercial use of the structure. Community Development Director Caldwell.
Mayor Garnes, members of the council, this item starts on page 97 of your packet. And the mayor did an excellent job of actually explaining and summarizing the ordinance here, which is ordinance 385-2021. This too was presented at your meeting of April 6th. It was the introduction of first reading of it. The Planning Commission discussed this issue at their meeting of March 23rd and recommends that the council adopt this ordinance, basically allowing agricultural structures not to be included in the lot coverage calculations. Those agricultural structures are greenhouses, concrete floors, would have to be removed within 2 years after no commercial activity within them. And ordinance actually requires a bond to ensure that removal. With that, I would recommend that your council open up the public hearing, take any comments that they may have, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions from the council or from members of the public. And I would recommend that your council adopt ordinance number 385-2021.
Thank you. So I'll open up to the council. Councilmember Carter.
No questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson.
I'm good. No questions.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. I think there was a typo in our packet, and that is this was calling for the approval of resolution 1484-2021, which I believe we did at our last meeting, April 6th, if memory serves me correct.
Not wrong.
That's my only comment.
Okay, thank you. And so, Community Director Caldwell, I need your,
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson is correct. I actually don't see reference in the staff report itself to that resolution. It could be on the agenda, but if it is an error. And that resolution, as Mayor Pro Tem Johnson just indicated, was approved at your meeting of April 6th.
okay, and I was going from the agenda. Okay, thank you, Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. I have no questions, and so I will open it up to public hearing. Are there any hands raised or emails?
Currently, there are no hands raised. Thank you.
And no emails.
Thank you. And I will close public hearing and ask for a motion to approve and adopt ordinance number 385-2021.
So moved by Johnson.
You have a motion. Is there a second?
Oh, second. Oh,
Somebody seconded.
somebody seconded it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Mayor Garnes.
Yes. Motion carries 4-0. And our final action item is the second reading and approval of ordinance number 386-2021, establishing industrial hemp regulations banning the cultivation of industrial hemp in the city, section 17.30.180 of the Rio Dell Municipal Code, and renumbering general provisions and exceptions, sections 17.30.010 through 17.30.370 to accommodate the proposed industrial hemp regulations. Community Director Caldwell, Development Director Caldwell.
Mayor Garnes, member of the council, this item starts on page 107 of your packet. Once again, the mayor has done an excellent job in summarizing the meat of the changes here in this ordinance. As the council is aware, Humboldt County adopted a ban on industrial hemp, I believe it was late last year. And the ban was in response to cannabis farmers' concerns regarding cross-pollination and introduction of pests that are normally associated with hemp cultivation. We have talked to some of our cannabis cultivators, primarily up on the Dinsmore Plateau, where one of the owners up there made application to receive approval for 20 acres of hemp cultivation. Those farmers are extremely concerned again regarding potential cross-pollination and then the introduction of pests that are associated with industrial hemp. As the council is aware, the city has made a tremendous investment in the cannabis industry, generates some significant revenue for the city, and we certainly don't want to jeopardize that, and our cannabis farmers don't want to jeopardize their investments. With that, I would recommend and for council open up public comment on this, receive public comment, and I can answer questions they have. If there are none, I would recommend council adopt number 386-2021, not only establishing industrial hemp regulations and industrial hemp cultivation, but would also renumber our general provisions and exceptions accordingly based on those new regulations. Again, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I will open it up to council. Councilmember Wilson.
I have no questions or comments.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter.
No questions here either. Thank you.
And I have no questions. Are there any hands raised or emails?
There are currently no hands raised. Thank
And no emails.
Thank you very much. Then I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion to approve and adopt and approve ordinance number 386-2021.
So moved by Johnson.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. It's Carter.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Mayor Garnes.
Yes. Motion carries 4-0.
Mayor Garnes?
Yes.
Before we move on to the next item, I have a clerical error that we need to correct. I'm going to ask the city clerk to help me with this. On the consent calendar, item G, G5, approving the employment agreement for the finance director. There is a there are a couple different typographical errors which can be fixed, but there is a date in the an error in the start date for that particular contract. It was meant to be immediate, and the start date on the contract identifies July 1st. So, Karen, do you have can we revisit that item and have it?
Yeah, I think as long as you declare it, I believe the council can either choose to bring it back or just adopt it with the correction.
Okay. Is there, can I just then ask for a motion to adopt it with the correction?
Yes, as was that the only correction, city manager?
There were some other typographical errors, non-substantive.
Okay.
City manager?
Yes.
There is also in it said there was an exhibit A supposed to be attached, and there was no exhibit A. It's no big. It's just the rate structure that listed the salary. But
Okay.
if we want it, we can come get it. I mean, but that is a technical.
Yeah, I apologize.
Yeah. It is the one that's in the regular salary schedule, correct?
I believe so.
Correct. Yes, correct.
Okay. So
So
go ahead.
the motion would just be to reopen item G5 and approve the aforementioned amendments to the corrections to the language and date.
Okay. I am then asking for a motion to reopen consent calendar item G5 and to approve the corrections to the language and to the date.
So moved by Johnson.
Is there we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second by Wilson.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Mayor Garnes.
Yes. Motion carries 4-0, and thank you for catching that before we ended the meeting. And so now we will move on to council reports and communications. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. I have a question for either city manager or community development director. I had thought that the Element 7 would be opening for business weeks ago. Do we know what's holding up their grand opening?
Through the mayor, if I may, we were actually contacted by Element 7 yesterday, and they are in the process of doing interviews right now, and they are looking for opening the first week in May.
Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mayor Garnes.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson.
Nothing to report as far as, other than I think I have RCA Thursday.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Carter.
Thank you, Mayor Gerns. I attended on April 16th, the League of California Cities Transportation, Communications, and Public Works Policy Committee. No, mostly just broadband deployment is the name of the game now. But two things I wanted to bring up that could be coming our way is AB 1060, and that just establishes a statewide emergency alert system versus local emergency alert systems, and they're just thinking of fire season, I think predominantly there. And then we talked a lot about moving from a gas tax to a road charge as more vehicles become electric. And that was most of the meeting.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, thank you. And I attended the, just for future references, Cal Cities now. I think you have to give a quarter for every time you say League of California Cities.
It's so much shorter to just say Cal Cities. I like that so much more.
But I attended the Cal Cities Environmental Quality Policy Committee meeting, and we talked about, let's see, talked about a lot of stuff. AB 418, that was about power outages and power resiliency. That's a bill that we're supporting, and an extreme heat and community resiliency bill, AB 585. And there were a couple more: reducing single-use plastics and packaging. For example, Amazon, and really getting on board with not going after in a like suing way, but just getting after that topic of packaging, where you get, you know, a giant box that has one little tiny thing in it with a bunch of plastic in it to just fill up space, or hard plastic like Costco with everything in big hard plastic containers. And so just overusing things that we don't need to keep overusing. And then on the community services committee, one of the more important bills, AB 46, was about youth empowerment and trying to figure out a way and to address the growing need for, as communities, to empower our youth, to get them involved in our governments, to reach out to the school districts and try and get any kind of vulnerable, or even just, you know, any kind of kids that need help or even don't need help, just need something to do, and to just get involved, so that, you know, I guess we can have a hope and a belief that the next generation coming up after us will be engaged enough to actually step in the shoes. And it's getting a committee of 25 member committee, which is small, but it's a committee that will reach out to everyone. And the members will be from 14 to 25. And that's a way to get, that's one of the ways that we're hoping to get youth involved and empower them. And one of the things that was discussed, and I really am going to actually hadn't reached out to the city manager yet, but to talk about a mayor's youth commission, where, you know, we can get children, youth together and bring them in and kind of share information, find out what they need, try and work with the youth, and actually try and have them work with us. And so that's one of the biggest things, one of the more important things that I think came out of the Community Services Policy Committee was to try and figure out this new youth empowerment. I think that's enough for tonight. I'm on the traffic committee with the Eureka Traffic Committee, and we are trying to figure out a campaign to educate more than anything, different policies that aren't offensive, that are positive but not too harsh, just to get people to be aware of how they're driving, to be considerate of how they're driving. And ironically, there was a huge accident. I was in Eureka coming back to Rio Dell to get on the Zoom traffic committee, and there was a major accident between like Pearson's and Herrick, and the road was literally shut down. I mean, police officers, both sides, we had to U-turn and go back. And so that was kind of just irony, I guess, that I was coming to a traffic committee meeting about Eureka traffic and boom, accident. So anyway, that's all that I have. And I think we are ready for adjournment if there is a motion.
So moved by Johnson.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
All right, we have lots of seconds. And, thank everyone for being here tonight, and we will see you in 2 weeks, May 4th, 6:30.
Thank you.